Hello guys, my name is proofSzilko, welcome back to my channel. First of all, I want to wish Happy New Year to everyone. I hope that you celebrated the New Year's Eve with your friends and families. I did, but I was really keen to come back to you guys with the New Year's first tutorial. Today's tutorial will be about tips for first-person perspective mode, as you requested in my previous video. Alright, so this is the second time I'm recording this intro because the first time the intro couldn't step up to the level of the tips I'm gonna share with you. These tips are gonna be awesome, I promise you that, and they will help you to get more chicken dinners in PUBG. They did help me to get better in the game, to reach the top 15 level on the leaderboard. Currently I'm on the 14th position, and by implementing these tactics I'm constantly climbing higher and higher, so hopefully I will reach the top 10 soon and the number 1 position eventually. But I wanted to do a tutorial first about my top 8 FPP tips, which will help you to get better in the game and have more chicken dinners eventually. So I recommend you to watch the full video if you play in first person and you want to be better. Alright, so with that being said, let's start with the tutorial. Tip number 8. The main difference between first person and third person is that in third person you have a zoomed out camera angle, which is by default positioned higher than your character's head. Hence you have a better camera angle to assess your surrounding. But in first person your camera angle is on the level of your character's eyes, therefore you have limited view comparing to third person. And to compensate that, I usually jump from time to time. I use jumping when I want to take a quick look into a house or just running across a field to see if anyone's laying in the grass or camping in bushes. And moving on to tip number 7, it's in close connection with the previous tip. To gain advantage over my opponents, I usually climb onto hills and small objects, which helps me to have an advantage over my enemy and have a better view to be able to spot my enemies slightly before I usually do when I'm standing on the ground. I can hardly remember any cases when I had the higher ground advantage and I managed to lose that fight. Of course, this won't work in third person because your enemy can see you with the third person camera angle, but in first person it will work 100%. If you have the higher ground advantage, you'll be the winner of that gunfight, there's no question to that. Alright, so tip number 6. I see people, and sometimes I also do in third person perspective games, that laying on the ground can be beneficial since you will conceal yourself, nobody will spot you easily, and with moving around the third person camera you can assess your surrounding and spot anyone in time before they approach. But in first person this is not the case at all. Whenever I'm in first person I never lay down on the ground. The only situation when I do that is when I'm healing, because other than that you have a huge disadvantage over your enemies, because in this position you have a limited speed of movement and the grass on the ground will cover a huge part of your screen. So don't forget, never go prone when you're playing first person. This is only an advantage in third person. So moving on to tip number 5. In third person perspective modes, it's easy to pre-aim at your enemy, and with stepping aside from your cover you can hit easy headshots, but it's not the case in first person perspective. What you see is what you get basically, which means that if you want to know where your enemy is at, you have to leave your cover, and this is true for the opposite side as well. If they want to hit you, they have to leave their cover. So I highly recommend to everyone to utilize the leaning feature. If you lean towards both sides of the cover and add a little bit of crouching to it, you'll be a really small and hard target for your enemy to hit, and this will increase the chances that you will win that gunfight. As you can see on the footage in the background, my enemy was without any cover, so I could easily finish the last kill and get the chicken dinner eventually. So I really recommend this tip to all of you first person players. Tip number 4. Unlike in third person, in first person you won't be able to check what's directly behind you, but there's a way to do that. If you turn your character 45 degrees and you run in the same direction, with the free look feature you can check what's behind you and you won't even lose any speed while you're running. So this is very useful and I use it all the time to check whether someone is following me or not. And of course you can do the same thing to the other direction. So you can literally cover 360 degrees around you with this technique, so don't forget to use it. And moving to tip number 3. My enemies won't be able to see me while they're behind cover, so whenever I'm in a gunfight, I try to use the time while they're reloading or healing to switch positions between cover so that I can confuse them and use this to gain advantage over my enemies. And I used this countless times already, and this helped me a lot to win the gunfights and be in the top 15 on the FPP leaderboard, so I highly recommend you to use this technique as well. And tip number 2, in first person perspective, your vision is limited compared to third person, therefore you have to use every resource available to gain advantage. The sound design in PUBG is so good that using a high quality headphone can almost be the same as you would use a wall hack, for example. I still see many players without any headphones. It's easy to spot them because whenever you shoot them, they don't have the foggiest idea where you are, and the footsteps can be easily heard as well through the headphones. And sometimes you can hear even if someone is reloading or switching gear, like this player in the footage. I heard him reloading, so I could easily locate and kill him. So basically guys, if you're not using any headphones, you're giving yourself a huge disadvantage. So I recommend you to buy one immediately, and regardless of the quality, you can use them. It will be still better than if you wouldn't use any at all. And tip number 1, I saved the best for the last. Currently this feature is only available in the PTS. In first person mode you will have an FOV slider, and if you put it to the maximum you will have a much wider FOV than in the default settings. As you can see in the background, I switched between the minimum and the maximum FOV value. The screen in this command center fits exactly my screen, but if I change the FOV to the maximum, you can see that the difference is huge. I tried this with the scopes, and unfortunately FOV slider won't help you to check your surroundings through the gaps between your scopes and the edge of the screen. But if you put your FOV to the maximum and you use the free look feature, this will also help, so you'll be able to spot enemies in a wider angle, like you see in this footage. With the minimum value I couldn't see the truck behind me, but I changed the FOV value to the maximum and I could see the truck easily. So whenever you're on the maximum FOV, you can be sure that you will spot your enemies faster. Alright, so that's all I had for you today guys. I hope you found this video useful. If you did so, please don't forget to leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike, subscribe if you're new here, and I see you in the next one. Bye.